Hey everybody, back in the shop again, and as I mentioned in my last video, which was the final video of the Drop Zone Commander Post-Human Republic Army, I am about to get started on some orcs, as you can see behind me here. Now this has come from a client that I've worked with before. He likes to do conversions. In this case, this is sort of a mixed bag of stuff. As you can see, some of these guys have some paint on them already. Well, this one's mostly just primed and has like a base coat. This guy has some paint on him. They all look like they were sort of bashed together, possibly from different projects. Maybe different collections, maybe collected over a period of time. I'm not really sure, but it's okay. You know, I haven't done orcs in a while, and there is something kind of freeing about doing them. So, for example, on this guy here, his little power claw or whatever this is, they normally look like this, and but it was missing these two claws. So it was just the one sort of dew claw or back claw here, and of course my first reaction, because I'm not kit bashing and scratch building is never my first option. I would rather just replace a part. But again, this being orcs and realizing that sort of provides me some freedom, rather than even worry about it, I went and grabbed a couple of these. I guess these are probably falchions from the Grey Knights. I have tons of Grey Knight bits left over from back when everybody and their brother wanted me to paint Grey Knights. So I just cut a couple of them up and glued them on there, and they look fine. They're a little longer, but that's actually kind of cool. They're a little bit more outrageous than the ones provided for the models themselves. I like it. I think it's fine, and it gave me a chance to do something unique and sort of add my own stamp to these models in terms of the modeling side of things. I also have gone in and drilled out barrels and exhausts, and have done some cleanup. Now, Jeff, if you assembled these, you really need to be more careful in the future. And I go back and forth as to whether I want to paint things before assembling or assembling before painting, and it's usually some sort of halfway point. Like, what is the maximum amount of stuff that you want assembled to save yourself time later on, without impeding the painting process. And these were mostly fully assembled, and that's going to provide some challenges, I think. I'm not too concerned about it, but I don't work this way normally. I think there's a lot of this, like the writer probably wouldn't have been on at all. And I think the way I'm going to approach that to make this work is there's going to be a lot more contrast to the paint. So that means a black prime over the whole thing, and then if something's really down deep and hard to get to, it's not going to get as much paint, and it won't be as bright as the stuff that's outside, and that's okay. We can make that. That's actually the way I would normally want to work anyway. It's just that I think this will end up having more contrast than my stuff tends to, and that might be a good thing. Kind of depends on how you feel about my painting style in general. Sometimes I feel like I could go for more contrast. Something else I've done is they all had just bare bases, except for periodically having bits glued on there. I added some Vallejo sandy paste to all of the bases, and then I actually added some to the wheels as well. and the reason for that was twofold. First, I just thought it was a nice sort of pre-weathering technique to make it look like, the wheels are picking up dirt as they're coming through. But also, here's the sort of side benefit to this. A lot of the wheels had a lot of seams left, either open seams or even just visible seams. And without having to tear everything apart, or using liquid green stuff to fill things in, you put some of this texture paste on there, and it fills in the problem. It creates a weathering effect, and it's all good. Kind of makes things a little bit easier. So there's that, and there's going to be some other fun elements to this project. I got a banner I can do. Don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. I haven't really planned that far ahead. There was some other assembly work. Some of the guns were off, and I had to put those on. I suppose I could have left them off to make things easier, but I thought, well, since I'm not tearing them all apart, I might as well approach them all exactly the same way. And yeah, so that's it for now on this. I do have another project that I'm going to be doing simultaneously, and that is this. This is, I think it was referred to as the Deathmobile, from Army of Darkness. And this was part of the Leading Edge Games line of minis. They had the license for Army of Darkness minis, which was, it was an interesting line. And this depicts the little car war machine that he bashed together, that Ash bashes together, towards the end of the film. Interesting note about this, and that is that I actually did the original cover art for this set. So if you ever find one of these out in the wild, still with its cover wrap on it, then you see the painted version of the mini and the photograph on the back. I painted that originally. I was a lot younger then, and it wasn't. It's not some of my best work. Yeah, I spent a little while working for Leading Edge Games, painting things for their covers. Some of it is pretty crappy, but I'll be honest, I didn't like all their minis either. So it's sometimes hard to be inspired when in your paint when you're not inspired by the minis. So yeah, some of it was okay, but as it turns out, there was a buddy of mine at the time that I actually got him involved in it, and so he ended up doing a lot of the painting. Well, he ended up doing some of the painting towards the end, just before the company wrapped up and they all moved away. Anyway, so that's just a weird aside that I thought you might like. And so I'm going to go get some more work done and get some primer on these, and we'll see how much work we can get done today. And I'll talk to you in a bit. Hey, here's a quick tip prompted by doing some repair work on one of these models. Don't use super glue to glue plastic models. It's not ideal. Yes, it will stick them together, but it doesn't create a really lasting bond. And then if you change your mind later and want to go back and use your handy plastic model cement, it's a real pain in the butt to clean that stuff off. And as you can imagine, I'm speaking from very recent experience. I actually really like the Testors plastic model cement in this with the handy applicator. But recently, GW cribbed this idea, and so their thin plastic model glue comes with a similar applicator and should work just as well. But it really bonds the models together well, and if you use it right, you can even sort of fill seams while you're building. You know, you put in a little bit of extra glue and you kind of squeeze the parts together, and it creates that good bond, and it squeezes out a little bit of the combined plastic and glue, which then hardens and shrinks a little bit, and then cleaning off that little excess is a lot easier than having to go in and fill that seam later. But yeah, anyway, a little tip based on current frustrations. So I'll see you in a bit. So since today is a prep day, I'm actually going to be bouncing back and forth between these two projects, and one of the things I'm doing with the Deathmobile is stripping it down before I paint it. This little container is something I bought years ago. It's actually for cleaning brushes, and I almost never use it for that. It has a thing that goes over the top, and the brushes hang down into it, and they're supposed to soak, but I've found it to be more trouble than it's worth. But for doing stuff like this, it's great because you know, when you're done with your little parts, you just pull them all right out. In the meantime, they can soak down here. Now obviously this one is a little bit too big, and so I'm going to be brushing up the acetone over the top of it and letting it soak in, and then brushing it some more and letting it soak in, and eventually everything should come off. Although this white primer that's on this seems to be pretty resilient. So I don't know, we'll see. Hopefully that comes off, because I really would prefer to start from scratch on this. I might have to resort to some of my other strippers if I really want to get it all off. But you know, like the stuff that's in the bottom, it's going to soak for quite a while. I just want to get the initial paint off, and then I can really work on the primer. Acetone will usually get it done. And as with all things of this nature, you want to do it in a well-ventilated space. My shop has got all its windows open, and while I don't have a fan going or anything, the fumes aren't too bad at this point. It kind of smells a little bit like I'm working in a nail salon. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do more of this, and then I'll bounce back to the Orks sometime in the near future. And I'm actually waiting on putty and glue to dry on some of them, and then I'll get to the priming of those guys. So I will talk to you in a bit. So the Orks are drying their primer anyway, the initial primer coat, and I got this all primed as well. And while the Orks got a fairly traditional rattle can of primer, I decided to do this one with the Vallejo Surface Primer. I've used it a little bit before, but people rave about it so much that I decided that I wanted to really give it a good try, and I can see now why people seem to really like it. It holds well, has a nice tooth. It goes on really thinly, and I think it's really going to take the paint well. If there's a downside at all, it's that I could see burning through this bottle in no time. So yeah, anyway, there's that. And the Orks I'm going to go back over with the airbrush to even out the black undercoat. I think, even though I started with a can, it's pretty difficult to get into all the nooks and crannies when you're using a spray can. Airbrush works out a lot better. This isn't completely assembled, by the way. I did assemble it partly. The support on top is there, all the spikes on the side, the engine in the back. But that's as far as I'm going to go with this until I get all the individual pieces painted, and then I'll finish assembling it. I've realized there really is not much in the way of good reference photos. When I did the box cover piece, all I had to go on was an early cut of the film. So I actually saw this movie before it came out in the theaters. So I had the early cut, and it was a bad VHS copy, and it was pretty tough. So I'm gonna have to break out my DVD and look it over and make some sort of mental notes. I mean, I have a basic idea, but I'd actually like this one to be much, much nicer than the one I did initially. And I do have some other questions about some colors. Like, I know the car, and I'm sure I can get ash well enough, but I'm kind of curious about this, the kind of engine back here, and the wood coloration and things like that. Because I think I just kind of winged it last time, back in 1993, I think it was. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work. I'm not sure that I'm going to come back to you or not. I imagine so. I'll come back before the end of the day, and we'll see where things are. So I'll talk to you in a bit. So here we have a few of the Ork bikes, and I wanted to share a little trick that I sometimes use. So I mentioned that I use the Vallejo airbrush primer, surface primer, on the Deathmobile, but I don't have any black Vallejo airbrush primer, and I wanted to use the airbrush. So what I did instead was I took my regular spray can of primer, and I just sprayed it into a cup, this cup in particular, and then I transferred it into the airbrush. And of course you don't need to do any thinning or anything. You can just start spraying away because it's clearly all ready to spray, and you get really good control, you get really good coverage, and you essentially get an airbrush paint without having an airbrush paint. And so these guys are all done. Essentially, they're not going to get any paint on them today because I want to wait for the primer to really cure out before I do anything with them. I might do some work on the Deathmobile, but you know, I might not actually. This has been one of those days where I haven't felt particularly productive, and sometimes it's better to not push yourself too much, because you don't want to screw anything up because you're just not feeling it. Normally I can just work through that and it's not a problem. And again, I might do some things, like I think I might do the base coat color on the car. I have a sense already for what color that needs to be, and so I would just need to mix up a little airbrush paint and mix up a little paint for the airbrush, and we can make a go of it. So I think I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back. Yeah, why don't I do that, and then I'll come back. Well, hey everybody, new day, and I'm just getting into the shop, but I wanted to show you what I ended up doing at the end of yesterday. I got a little bit more sort of into this than I was expecting to. So I went in and did the base coat, and then I broke out a little transparent raw umber and did some shading. And this is Liquitex color, by the way. So it's one that I keep around specifically for doing this kind of shading. It's actually a transparent color, and then if you add some more medium to it, it becomes very transparent, and it means you can kind of build up your shadows very carefully. And then I did some of the metallic, like the bits holding the spikes on, and the oh, I can't remember what that's called, but that's on the original car. but I just sort of, you know, noodled around with it a little bit. I didn't do it a ton. Um, and then I went inside and I watched Army of Darkness again, which I haven't done in a long, long time. And then I went on the interwebs and tried to find some good photo reference for the car. And you know what? There isn't any. So weird. This is kind of a neat, unique design, and I could not find any good photo reference aside from screen caps from the movie, which don't help all that much because the one scene where this thing appears, it's dark, and so you don't really get to see too much. But you know what? It was enough to sort of remind me about how I should approach it. It doesn't need to be, you know, this isn't a you know, an accurate model of that piece. Although it's, you know what, it's not bad considering. Yeah, so that's going to be one of the things I play with today, and of course the orcs, I think, are going to get some work as well. I think what I'm going to end up doing with these is anything that's metal on these, I'm going to base with a dark rust color, because I like making orcs rusty. And then you can sort of build up metallic scratches from there and add color and make everything look like it's being worn off and rusted and banged up, and that should be a lot of fun. But that means starting with dark rust. And I think I got a good color for that in my last batch of Vallejo airbrush colors. So I'm going to dig into that and see what I got and use the airbrush. And if my voice sounds weird, it's spring has sprung here in New England, and so have my allergies. So I got a bit of the May sniffles. Yeah, all right, so time to get to work, and I will talk to you in a bit. So just to give you an idea of that base coat that I was talking about, the rusty base coat, and I used Vallejo Model Air Rust, or Oxido. Just quick and dirty, you know, just providing that base coat. And then I'll probably go over this with another, maybe even like a spatter coat of a little bit lighter rust. The nice thing about rust is that it's not very regular, it's not even. You want it to be a little all over the place in terms of coloration, so kind of you almost can't go wrong as long as you've got some color on there. Anyway, so on with the show, and I'm going to get some more work done. So I've been bouncing back and forth between these two projects today. The Deathmobile is coming along, and I imagine this will get done first since there's only one of them, but there's kind of a bit to it. And I started working on sort of a test case for the rest of the paint on the guys. This is obviously nowhere near complete, but I started digging up the metal and adding some of the worn color. And I really like how it turns out doing this method, which is essentially the rust overall that you saw to begin with, then the dings, and then the color added sort of kind of recessed back from all of the edges, and it really gives a nice worn appearance. But I didn't get too far with it. I mean, I took quite a bit of time going over all of the rest of them and getting the rust base where I want it. And after I did the rust, I did kind of a filter coat of this Vallejo orange just to add a little saturation to the rust color, because it was a little bit just too brown, and I wanted to add at least a bit of a more sort of fresh rust look to it. And the nice thing is that orange is very transparent, so all it really does is it brings the color forward a bit. And anywhere where there's not much of the rust color to begin with, it doesn't do much of anything, so it's kind of perfect. Yeah, and so I started doing, flesh tones on him, but that didn't get very far. This actually got, it looks like a lot more work. Painted all the spikes, went back over and did some highlights on the car body. I wish I could tell you what color the body was, because I don't know, because the paint lost its label, so it's that color. it's one of the new bone colors. It's not Ushtabi. I don't know which one it is. And I did, kind of a edging pass on various bits, and I did the I was going to say cow catcher, but it's really more like a spike. And so yeah, just a lot of noodling around on this thing to really get it going. Oh, I did the shield. But I think that's going to do it for today, and I'll do more videos when I get back into the shop again. There's going to be a lot of work left on both of these, but certainly a lot more on the Orks than the Deathmobile. I imagine the Deathmobile will probably get finished up possibly next time I'm in the shop, but we'll see. I might try and get in during the week and do a little bit here, a little bit there, with springtime really here and the weather in a much more, the weather's much more conducive to coming out in the shop in the evenings. I might actually be able to get more work done. So I don't know. We'll see. That's it for now, and I will talk to you all later. Thanks for watching, and hey, if you think about it, subscribe.